What's up, everyone? It's Father Grush back with you with another little update on our pilgrimage to the Holy Land. I hope everybody's doing well. Wanted to let you know we got into Jordan last night, to Amman, the capital of Jordan, and it all went okay. It was a long, long day of traveling, a lot of time in a plane and a lot of time in an airport, but we're here, and that's the most important thing. So thank you for your prayers and thank you for your support. So, I just wanted to let you in on what we did today. So, a lot of times when people think about the Middle East, right, and we think about religion in the Middle East, a lot of times we think instantly of Muslims, right? A lot of times when you see people with the traditional Middle Eastern wear, we think that they are Muslims, or we might think that there's just most of the Middle East is Muslims, that maybe there's the Jews in Israel, but a lot of times we don't really think about Christians. We might think about Christians more when we're talking about, Europe or the United States or some of these other places. But it was a really good day for us to think about and to reflect on today the ancient Christian roots in the Middle East, and especially in Jordan, where we are now. In fact, after the Romans came and destroyed the temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD, during that whole siege, where did the Christians go? To Jordan. And so Jordan, this area that we're in, has deep roots, not only biblically, but in the early church as well. Today we started our day with a trip to Madaba, where we actually got to celebrate Mass at the Church of St. John the Baptist, which is the home church of our guide, our pilgrimage guide in Jordan. Bashar is his name. Bashar was telling us about this church and a little bit about the area of Madaba. So we were at this church to celebrate Mass at St. John the Baptist. It's named St. John the Baptist because it's believed by the people who live there that St. John the Baptist was actually beheaded just nearby to where Madaba is. And so this church is named the Martyrdom of St. John the Baptist. So we celebrated our Mass. It's actually built over the Acropolis. It's kind of like a fortress of that ancient city. And so if you can actually go underneath the church into these this basement area, these crypts below, and what's really neat is you can see the foundations of old fortress buildings, right, from the time of the Byzantine Empire, and even earlier than that. So we were able to see some ancient Byzantine mosaics that were down there. We also even saw there was a well that was there that was actually dug by the Moabites, which were one of the tribes that the Israelites fought against in the Old Testament. So the Moabites had dug this well, and the cool thing, you can still get water from this well. You can actually pull up the bucket, and there's water in there. Pretty incredible stuff. We also went to Mount Nebo, where Moses ascended Mount Nebo and saw the Promised Land for the first time. You remember that after Moses brought the Israelites out of Egypt in the Exodus, the book of Exodus, that they were traveling through the deserts for 40 years. And in the process, they had gone through all of these different trials and everything. And in that time, Moses had doubted God and doubted his promises, even just for a short time. God took Moses up the mountain and showed him before them the promised land, right? So we actually went to the top of Mount Nebo. It's really not that tall of a mountain. But we went to the top of this mountain, and we could look out and we could see all of the promised land, right? The talk that the Bible talks about. So we saw like the Dead Sea over here, and we saw, Jerusalem back here. We saw, the area where Bethlehem is, and we saw the Jordan River, and all of these areas that we hear about from the scriptures, the promised land that God had promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their descendants. And Moses saw it, but he couldn't go in because of his doubt. And so we went up there, and we were able to kind of see that view that Moses would have seen in those days. If you remember from the Old Testament, Moses, at a certain point, the people were complaining against God. And we probably know what that's like, right? Complaining against God. But thankfully, this didn't happen to us when we complained, but God sent serpents to come and to bite the people, and many of them who got bit, they died because of these poisonous serpents. And so Moses, in speaking with God, begging him for mercy, he erected a bronze serpent. They carved a serpent out of bronze and they hung it on a pole. Now, the Christian church, we've always seen this as an analogy for Jesus. Jesus, who was mounted on a pole on a tree on the cross, and who, just like Moses lifted up the serpent in the desert, he even tells us in this in the Gospels, that so the Son of Man was lifted up. And anyone, when we look on Christ, when we turn our hearts to Christ, that he gives us mercy and health as well. So we got to see there's a neat statue of the bronze serpent, but it's actually supposed to look like Jesus on the cross. A really beautiful image. Now, my favorite place that we got to visit was in Madaba, and it was this church called St. George. Now, St. George is a Greek Orthodox church, and it's famous for an incredible mosaic that is from the 500s AD, so 500 years after the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Now, on the floor, there's a detailed map of the Holy Land, the very places that we're going to visit in just a few days. And it's really detailed. It goes from Syria up in the north all the way to Egypt in the south. And it has labels and all these words and descriptions, things in Greek. So I'm extra thankful for the year and a half of Greek that I took back when I was in high school and college. But as we look at this, we might wonder, what's the big deal about a map, right? Why is a map important? Well, this is where it gets interesting. That map was used by pilgrims, and it's from the 500s, right? But when we take that map and we line it up with some of the descriptions of that area from pilgrims who were there in the 400s AD and the 300s AD, they actually line up really, really closely. And so we even can consider those people who were there in the 300s AD, so really early on, they were even visiting places that were well established, that were following traditions that were passed on even by word of mouth and by people's memories that had happened only about 200 or 300 years before. And so they've used this map that they've lined up with all these other things to even identify other sites that were lost to history. So for example, the Jordan baptismal site, the place where Jesus was baptized in Jordan, was actually rediscovered because they found this map and they really dug into and they found the ruins of a church that was built on that site. Now, what does this tell us? I think it tells us something pretty interesting, is that, sometimes there's this doubt, right? When you go to these holy sites and you look at some of this stuff and you say, okay, but is this actually real? Did this thing actually happen here? How do we know that it happened there? How do we know it happened at all? But what this shows us is that even from the earliest days, that we can speak with a lot of certainty that the places that we are going to visit throughout the Holy Land are pretty legitimate, that we have a pretty good idea that these are the very places where Jesus walked and prayed and taught his disciples. I think that is pretty cool. I hope you do too. So we are getting ready to go to some of these places in the next couple days. But tomorrow we are still in Jordan. Tomorrow we are going to go to the ancient city of Petra. I hope that you continue to pray for me. Know that I'm praying for you. We have Mass tomorrow in our hotel room, so not quite as cool as St. John the Baptist. But we will be praying for you tomorrow and for your intentions. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. I hope to update you more tomorrow or the next couple days. Peace.